Alright folks, welcome back to the channel. So in this particular episode, we're going to be talking about the 5U faceplate that the Raspberry Pi 7-inch screen mounts to. In addition, I'm going to release a couple more accessory trays. So let's take a look at what we've got here. As you can see, this particular piece, you mount your Raspberry Pi screen to. Let's turn those off for a sec. Now, if you look, actually here, let's go ahead and change the color of that just because. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Okay. We can see that a lot better now. All right. So, if you look here, you'll see these holes are not in exactly the same place on either side. So the way I have this set up, my screen sits a particular orientation so that I can see the best viewing angle. In my situation, I look at it from this side here. If you know anything about the 7-inch Raspberry Pi screens, you'll know that they're not particularly the best for a lot of things, but they are cheap and they work. And in particular, one of the things that they're not great at is viewing angle. So those things are meant to be viewed kind of downward angle, right? And so the way that it's set up in portrait mode here, you know, I would essentially have this being kind of rotated right 90 degrees. Now, in order to do that with your Pi, you're going to have to get in and change some configuration settings and things like that. That said, you know, if your desk is set up differently than mine, and I'm assuming that it probably is, you'll want to get in here and change where these things are. Now, I'm not going to render a whole nother copy of this for you. You can do that yourself. But just beware, the way that this prints, its viewing angle comes in this way. Not this way. That way, you'd want to switch all of that around. It was not the easiest thing in the world to get nailed down from a sizing perspective. There's a lot going on inside this. So anyway, yeah, beware of that. Now, let's add a couple other things. So the next thing is this. Well, not that. Sorry. This tray. So, one of the users has a switch that's identical to mine, aside from mine being PoE. And so I'm going to go ahead and release this tray that I used in the first gen. I've adjusted the sizing so that it fits properly, and as you can see, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. We'll just go ahead and inspect, and it should be, I believe, 115. So going this way to this way, yeah, 115. Okay, so essentially the way this works is the Netgear GS 108 fits here, and then I have a RAV power brick here, and I had a Western Digital Passport, just kind of small USB drive that fits there. So I'm going to release that one today as well, and hopefully that comes in handy for some of you. And then I'm also going to release this one. Now, this particular tray serves zero purpose aside from holding the bottom of the screen into the rack. So as you can see, like that would go there, right? And then, you know, you have this other tray above that, right? And so, you know, this is kind of how it would sit. And then for me, I have the screen in the front, and then I have the RAV power brick sitting here in the middle. Reason being, I wanted to be able to pull this faceplate out without pulling out all the power stuff. So anyway, those are the three parts I'm going to release today. Let's go ahead and take a look at what they look like on the slicer. So this piece in particular is somewhat difficult to print. Reason being, that does require supports. So what we want to do is lay it on its face, much like that. We'll go ahead and center it. We're going to set this for 5 and 5 as usual. Just like that. I'm also going to set up supports for build plate only. Hit yes on that. And then what you'll see is it'll fill all that stuff in. Now, the printing is not the hard part. You know, the cleanup afterwards is a little more difficult. You know, as you can see, it's going to have some remnants of supports and things that you're going to have to peel out. And if your printer's anything like mine, you may have some loose strands from some of that infill. Or I guess not infill, but new bottom layer that goes over top of that. So just beware, you might need a heat gun to kind of, you know, clean some of that up. And obviously you're going to have to do a little bit of cleanup work on it. But that particular print, that's 7 hours, 24 minutes. So that's not too bad. As you can see, I do actually have, you know, magnet spots in here. So when you print that, you want to make sure that your magnets aren't in there as well. That actually holds really well to the front of the device, or of the rack. So that's good stuff. let's move on to the next one. Okay, so for this, you don't really need to change anything other than set it to 5 and 5. No supports needed. So yeah, 4 hours, 50 minutes for that one plate. And then let's go to the next one. Yeah, this one actually does pretty well, so we'll set it for 5 and 5 as usual. Slice now. Yeah, so hour and 41 minutes for that. You know, this doesn't really serve any purpose literally except for holding the bottom of the screen in, right? So, you know, you wouldn't want to put anything in there anyway. But, you know, that's literally all it does. Anyway, so I'll throw a video out here of you know, current status of the rack, if you will, and kind of show you where I'm at. I've got to rewire some stuff, and I got some new parts that I'm going to throw in, so that kind of delayed my progress this weekend. But yeah, in addition, I kind of need a break from stuff, so it is what it is. I want to give you a little bit of a closer look at how that accessory tray for the switch and the Rav power brick works. So, you know, rather than using essentially the mount bottom tray here, you'd use that instead. And the way that it works is obviously, you know, you put all your stuff in here, and this just happens to hold that perfectly. I mean, like, you couldn't get a better fit for that, and I did not plan that. It was almost like it was made for this thing. So you put it in there, and then that will essentially hold that in place as you plug stuff into it. So I was kind of, I was impressed with my design on that. I was like, that's not planned, but works really cool. Then of course the Rav power brick fits there, and then, you know, I had this little Western Digital drive sitting here. I just kind of had that from a couple of years ago, and it works to plug right into this Pi up here. So yeah, hopefully that helps with kind of visualizing what I intended for that particular tray. And it worked really well in my first design, but since I'm going to pull that out and I'm going to actually plug my Pis directly into my aggregate switch instead this time, I think it's really going to increase my throughput for my cluster, but it's also going to cut down on the amount of cables and stuff that I have just kind of in my rack. So, all right, so this is where we're at with the build. So as you can see, this is tier 1, which would be the bottom. We've got tier 2, that's going to be the management cluster. We got tier 3, that's going to be the workload cluster. And then we have the display section. As you can see, these are the power cables that are going to route all the way up through the bottom. I'm waiting on a couple more parts for the section here, mainly being these 10cm jumpers. And also, I ordered a different set of Pi fans for this than what I had in stock. I'm not a fan of the ones that I had, so I ordered the same ones that I've got for this, and that's what I'm running here as well. That way, you know, I don't get any weirdness. I've got the proper airflow for everything and all of that set up, and then I can start building the rack out. So I've already got the Noctuas built into the top, and I'd say probably by the end of this week, this thing ought to be ready to build for the weekend. So looking really, really good. All right, so I've got 5 of the blades installed now, and you may be wondering, okay, with all the wiring that's in there, right? You have a power cable and an Ethernet cable for each of those. That's quite a bit of wiring, especially as stout as those Ethernet cables are. So what's it look like inside? Well, let's take a look at the top. You can see it's all wired up like it's supposed to be. I'm not going to do the buttons yet. I'll do that when I start writing code for that. But that's kind of what it is now. Let's take a look at the back. So from the back, you can see I've got my power in here. Of course, I'll have 3 more when I put the other blades in. Again, I'm waiting for you know, some parts. So that probably won't happen until the weekend. But anyway, you can see I've got the blade here in the top that runs the screen. Got power. And then here at the bottom, you can see the cable management loops in here, so they all run through there, and then they tie into this. And then, of course, these are your Ethernet cables coming out the bottom, right? So I'll have 3 more here, and then that'll all come out the bottom. So that's what we're looking at, and that's probably how it's going to stay until this weekend. I've got some more parts I've got to get for these blades, and then I can move forward. All right, so now that you've seen the last couple of cuts that I put in this video as far as where I'm at with my build, let's talk about what I had to go back on with that. So what I discovered was the network cables that I used were just ever so slightly by about 2 feet too short. Now, I knew that was a potential possibility, but I had them on hand, and that's what I used. And, it's really not that bad. It's not that bad. But what that means is I've essentially got to recable everything that's inside, and that's good for you because it gives me a chance to record me doing that. So you'll get some better footage of how I'm doing my cable management, and maybe you can use that to model yours, or at least take some inspiration from that. In addition, it's also going to allow me to change the type of wire stay, if you will, that I was using. So originally I was using zip ties because that's what I had on hand, but since I had to order network cables, I'm like, all right, well, I'll just order some Velcro as well. So I'm going to redo everything in here with Velcro and new network cables and stuff like that. And since I have all the parts now that I need for this section, I can build those out as well. So hopefully I'll have this whole thing done this week, and I'll probably do an entire separate video on the build of that. So, stay tuned for that. But anyway, enjoy what's left of your weekend. Have a good one.